Okay, and welcome to episode 97 of Shockwaves. I'm one of your hosts, Rob G. Sitting here with Mr. Elric Kane.
Not wearing the same shirt as you. Almost.
It was
a close call.
Almost a double
Fright Rags is too popular.
I know, they are too popular. Or we just have similar taste.
Maybe I'll get changed after and we'll take a photo together.
Really?
Double the Fright Rags.
That's fine. Well, actually, you should stand on one side, I'll stand on the other, and then it'll be even.
Oh, we could do a shining thing.
And it can be a private moment between you two
Could be, yeah.
Also with us, Ryan Turek is here.
Hello.
Also wearing a Fright Rag shirt, I believe.
I am.
Yeah. Rebekah McKendry.
I'm not wearing Fright Rags.
No, but you're freshly tattooed.
Yes, I am. I got a tattoo today.
So
she basically got the photo that we took with all of our friends at Texas Frightmare, and she got it tattooed on her forearm.
All of the faces right there. So,
really?
Yeah.
It didn't look like it. It looks like flowers.
No, it does kind of look like
Way to
flowers.
dispel that one.
It's everybody. No, it's flowers. It's actually a dinner plate pattern from when I was a kid. Like I stared at these plates 3 times a day for like 18 years. And
God damn, you're edgy.
I know. I'm so
I'm going to take a floral pattern for a plate.
People kept writing on my Facebook like, "Where are the skulls?" And I was like, on my leg. So this is flowers, guys. So,
wow.
Yeah. So that was my day.
Hey,
I'm gonna get a special. I'm gonna get a special sofa pattern from the '70s couch that my parents.
Somebody
once
might
had.
sit on your back though.
Well,
that's not right.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I actually might like that. I don't know why.
Guys, this is getting crazy already.
Tattoo talk. Well, I think it's because we've been out of the studio for weeks now.
Yeah,
and we've been
2
doing
weeks.
Episodes all over the place, from Chattanooga to the Overlook to Texas Frightmare. But we are back in Los Angeles at the Blumhouse Productions conference room, freshly back and ready to rock and roll. I want to report back from Texas Frightmare and kind of talk about our experience there, because all 4 of us made it. And we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of panels, a lot of stuff we were doing.
Elric is choking.
Elric is
because
dying.
He's having a good time.
Get a
was
water.
So excited.
Heimlich?
Yeah. Dude, you're coughing like I do.
Heinrich from Possession? Or
So he speaks out and speaks poetry.
It's the death of a podcaster live.
You're all right. You
Damn,
right, buddy?
LaCroix.
You gonna be all right?
Good.
All right, Bekah's trying to kill me with a LaCroix.
Do I need to punch you in the stomach, please?
All right.
Stab you
As you were.
I'll use my EpiPen on you. Don't test me.
Oh my God.
As long as you get to the breastplate.
No, but I wanted to report back from Texas Frightmare, but I fully intended to do this for a Texas Frightmare show. And not that I forgot, but things get so hectic and you're kind of like trying to make sure that we're recording and kind of the whole live aspect. But, we had posted a photo last year of us with a handful of people with Shockwave shirts. And then this year we had like triple the amount, which was really wonderful. But it got me thinking, and last year, somebody at the center of that photo is a gentleman, an artist named Dustin Pace, who is no longer with us. And so I fully intended to dedicate our live one to him last week. And again, you get wrapped up in kind of the whole spirit of the convention, and it's a little hectic. And so I just wanted to correct that and dedicate this episode to Dustin.
Yeah.
Because again, it just, it blows my mind that people listen to us at all. And part of the fun of going to some of these events is all of us individually talking to different people and getting their perspective on how they listen to the show, why they listen, and just starting a conversation with us because they listen every week. And so, thank you to that. And again, I just wanted to shout out to Dustin Pace, who you are missed, and we
Very
still
much
remember you.
so.
So
Nice.
We should also give a shout out to Odin Art, who is our cosplayer.
All right, that's
and
much.
every year ups his game a little bit more of coming dressed like the Shocker. And this year he came in like his giant
head.
kind of like Lion King Broadway showish head made out of
Julie
foam.
Taymor would have been jealous.
Yeah, it was like
Light
made
up
out
eyes.
of foam insulation with light up eyes. It was epic.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Whatever happened to that head?
It ended up in the trash because he
No, but it
couldn't
looked
get
awesome.
it back in the car.
They hid it behind a trash can with the eyes glowing. And
It was crazy.
so they're going to like...
It was so cool.
It's the scene of Mulholland Drive Drive where the guy has the heart attack behind the thing.
I realized that we had just left it behind on the table, and we were just grabbing all of our suitcases and heading upstairs.
Because we were like going to miss our flight.
And I looked behind, and I just saw this head and a single tear.
He said he was going to come back for it, but then he's like, "Oh, I couldn't fit in my car," so he just left it, which is totally fine.
But it was very cool.
But how was the convention from your perspectives, guys? Because we all did panels, and well, Elric, you came in the last hour.
Yeah.
But boy, did
it was
we
really
party.
fast.
Yes,
it was fast.
So much partying.
I didn't go full Udo. I saved a little bit of that.
Full Udo.
You mean you didn't go full Chattanooga?
One day we'll explain. Well, Chattanooga is not even a touch on Udo. Well, one day we'll explain what that really means.
One day we'll talk about Udo. But like the whole experience, it's just always fantastic. I love Texas so much. The panels are always a blast. I did Katie Featherston, who is just lovely. We need to have her on sometime. She's just wonderful. Yeah. I loved her so much. And I did the Cenobite panel, which was just a trip. And I love being in that giant hall and looking out and seeing just those hundreds of people who are all just there cheering for her. It's wonderful.
Are they taped anywhere?
Yes.
Yeah,
a lot of them have been popping up on YouTube.
So the Texas Frightmare Weekend YouTube page is starting to put up your panels, my
they put up the Cenobite one.
Yeah, the Saw one went up. I had a lot of fun because outside of the show, I flew in with Don Mancini, who was on the show, and so we knew each other a little bit, so we kept each other company at the airport as we both flew in together. But then when we flew back, it was pretty amazing because it was me and Don again. Bekah was on our flight with Bousman, Darren Bousman.
Which I have to tell a story about in a sec.
Talk about the TSA thing first, because I have the punchline of that story.
So Darren and I were on the same flight, and we're going through TSA together and through security, and he's like right in front of me. And so we get through like that where they're like, doing the x-ray on the bags, and they pull him aside, and he looks at me and he goes, "It's the fucking doll." Because he had Billy. He had the Saw doll.
Billy for photo ops, and he refused to check it. He refused to it was his carry-on.
And
it's Billy the doll from Saw.
And it still has all the animatronics and the motors inside. So when that shit gets x-rayed, it probably looks awful. And so they pull him aside, and there's this woman, and she's like, "Sir, what is this?" And he's trying to crack jokes with her. And he was like, "It's the doll from Saw, watch out." And she's like, surly TSA lady. She's having none of this.
None of it.
And she's just like, "Sir, why is this in your bag?" And he's like, "Because I directed the movie." And he gets dead serious.
And she asked if it was dangerous, and he's like, "Well, it is the doll from Saw." And she was like, stone-faced.
Done.
Bousman.
Is it dangerous, though?
It was great.
Wow.
So
they let him on?
I took pictures of him getting searched.
So here's the best part. So I walk on the plane, Bekah walks on, Don walks on, Bousman's in front of me. And he's trying to fit Billy into the upper compartment, and it won't fit. And so who comes to the rescue? Matthew Lillard stands up, and then Ethan Embry, and the three of them help him get Billy into the up compartment.
Wow.
And I'm just kind of like laughing, like I should go on Facebook Live right now because this is ridiculous.
It's just crazy.
Because everybody was at the convention, and we were all on the same flight back. Yeah. So it's one of those things where you're just like, oh God, what world is this that we live in?
It was just cool.
Moments before that, I saw Bousman join me for lunch.
Oh yeah, tell that part. That's even funnier.
And it's Ethan Embry and Matthew Lillard are there. We're all just kind of getting barbecue, and Ethan Embry was just kind of hanging out on his own, and Matthew Lillard went on his way. But Bousman and I are sitting there eating. We're just talking, shooting shit about business and stuff. And then he goes, "But you're on my flight, right?" And I go, "No." And he goes, "Oh shit, I'm going to be late." And he grabs everything and runs off because he just presumed I was on the same flight. I was like, "No, man,
that's pretty basic.
I'm much later. But let's talk about Ethan Embry and his final form. I totally respect this dude. This dude went from can hardly wait, this timid looking cat, into survivalist 70s dad.
Yeah.
He's got these 70s glasses my dad used to have. He's chiseled. He's a badass.
Really?
So mad respect to Ethan Embry.
I didn't even notice that. Like that he was all chiseled.
Oh,
now.
big time. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, that was Devil's Candy?
Yeah, but he was like heroin addict skinny and Devil's Candy. Like he was like kind of ripped, but he was definitely trim.
Yeah. That was definitely a transformation.
It was like an Iggy Pop frame in Devil's Candy.
He's a dude, man.
Yeah. But I would say that it was a good time. It was great meeting so many fans, and meeting so many Halloween fans, and meeting so many Blumhouse fans, and meeting so many people I now know from Instagram. And the panels went great too. I think that the Jason Voorhees collection of man.
You had your hands full with
I had my hands full because we had all the surviving Jasons except for Derek Meares on stage, and it was just like cranky old Jasons, duking it out on stage. And I literally led the panel by saying, I just want to create a reality show for Shudder. You throw all these guys in a cabin, and it was insane. Steve Dash had a heart attack the week before, and yet he made it to the convention.
Oh my gosh!
I'm blanking. Kane Hodder. Him and Kane were verbally sparring. At one point, Kane said something to the effect like, "Yeah, I wish you had another heart attack or something."
Jesus
and
Christ.
the entire audience went, "Ooh."
Yeah, you claim that it was all in fun, but like I walked in midway through and it seemed a little tense to me. I'm sorry. All those Jasons.
It was very.
They're a little edgy.
They were a little edgy, but once they got back behind the stage, they were all just like, "Ha ha ha, that was great. We had a good time." But I had a lot more fun. No disrespect to all my fellow Jasons, they were great. I had a greater time on the Child's Play panel, which was a lot of fun because it was just everybody up on stage talking about the franchise. Don's always terrific. Fiona was my first time meeting her, and I thought she was fantastic. And it was great because she found out she was going to be on our Purge television show in real time next to us because her table was right next to our table. And she got the call right there on the spot when I was standing next to her. And she's like, I just got a great job. And Mancini's like, yeah, she's going to be on your show. I was like, no way. That's great.
Awesome.
So she's going to play a cult leader on the Purge TV show.
Cool. Isn't there a Chucky show as well? Is that in the
Don is doing a series. Yeah, he's working on a series. But it was a great time. I mean, like, listen, I explained there were a couple other folks that were from Los Angeles that I saw were heading out to Texas Frightmare. And I think we all agreed that it was just like the sense of camaraderie and the spirit of horror and the fandom really under all one roof is just such a good time. And in Texas, where it's kind of distanced from the industry and distanced from Los Angeles, I felt this last year, but I certainly felt this again this year, where it's all about the pure love of horror and the world that we roam about it in. So it's
people try to compare like, but is it better than Monster Blues? And I'm like, dude, it's a totally different vibe.
It's a different vibe.
They're both great in their own ways, and that's what I love about it.
You're not sleeping over at Monster Blues, so you're less of a captive audience. You know what I mean? You're not living it. You're just there and then you leave.
And there were so many people that we've met at Texas Frightmare that I now consider to be my friends, like Shane and Michelle and
weird
Dustin.
presence is so nice with people.
And just it's wonderful to see everybody there again each year.
Yeah, so great fun. Hopefully we'll see you guys there next year. And it's definitely a great show and recommend going out to it. And you can find our panels on YouTube.
Yeah.
Let's see. Quick shout out. We will not be talking too much about this, but a few months ago now, I talked about a film called Deadly Games, a cool kind of lost French movie that this company called Camera Obscura Film Distribution put out. And that company heard our show and not only offered to send copies of Deadly Games for the rest of my co-hosts, which are on their way, but they sent us a crap ton of films, like stacks of a lot of.
We don't know the title of any of them.
Yeah, because they're all international. So I don't know what I'm watching, but it's excited.
It's on the back cover.
I did recognize the Long Night of the Glass Dolls. That's the only cover. I was like, I love that one.
Nice.
So hopefully we'll be kept in the next couple of months. You'll be hearing a lot of these new discoveries from us, including apparently the pig fucking movie that was mentioned on
the Joe Bob Briggs episode.
Joe Bob brought up. They're like, we put that out. We'll send you one.
I'm good.
Ryan just got rid of his copy of that one. He's like, you guys can.
I gave my extra to Bekah.
I'm gonna donate that one to Hard Trivia.
I got a plan. I'm gonna put on the other Evil Dead T-shirt, and me and you are gonna watch the pig fucking movie.
This is getting weird, guys.
Boom.
It's getting weird.
It's happening. We're doing this.
I like weird ideas. So sure.
Weird.
All for it.
Weird.
Let's see. So much to talk about that we've seen in the intro.
Oh, yeah.
I'll kick it off. I went and saw Halloween 4. There was a big anniversary screening of that here in Los Angeles that our friend Brian Collins hosted at the Chinese 6. And, I like this movie. It's the first one that I saw in theaters as a kid. I remember the Fangoria that had Michael Myers in the front of it. I went with my friend Sean Clark, and we were sitting there, and a lot of the cast and crew were there. And I don't know, man. I'm very excited for the Blumhouse Halloween. Let me put it to you that way. Because here's the thing. I appreciate it. I love the opening shot. Man, is this a goofy movie. Now that it's been 20 some odd years or whatever.
That's still way better than 5.
It's pretty, it's way better.
I mean, at least it feels like a whole world.
It is fun. and I get the attempt to kind of continue from the original, but it's the beginning is kind of goofy. Really, it's the other actors that, like, when Ellie Cornell comes into the picture and Donald Pleasance, bless his soul. The stuff he says is so goofy, but man, does he believe it. Like, he believes it every step of the way, and no matter what monologue you gave him, he always delivered.
He's
So like, that part of it I really love. I mean, his mask is terrible. Like, Michael Myers looks terrible in that movie. And I know that they went back and forth between two different Myers guys, George Wilbur and Tom Morgan. Now I can kind of tell which one is which. But really, it's when you get to Daniel Harris and Ellie Cornell and their story, because they're both really, really terrific. And that's actually what I appreciate now in retrospect, is how young Danielle was and how good she is for a child actor in it, and how she played off of Ellie Cornell's character, Rachel, who's still my favorite character from the franchise. Like, she's just such a great character.
Is she the cop's daughter? Or is that
no, that's Kathleen Kinmont's character. No. She's the stepsister who basically will do anything to protect her stepsister. And I mean, again, you're more conscious of it. I mean, it was fun with an audience, especially like kind of the beer belly rednecks that go and accidentally kill Ted Hollister. Like, I mean, there's like some fun stuff in there.
There's some towny shit in there.
There's some fun towny shit. But the Q&A after, they brought up Daniel Harris. But really, I was excited because the screenwriter was there, and he very rarely does appearances. And he was, what's his name again? I got to bring it up. But he was terrific. And some of the insight into kind of what he wrote, I would love to see his original script, because he really was a diehard Halloween fan. And so his original script opened with the end of 2, where you see how Donald Pleasance survives. Basically, he, like, a whole thing collapses on him, and then you see him running out in flames, and they kind of, basically, they retcon it, so it's like, well, he kind of could have survived that massive explosion. So there was that, and then the other great story that he brought up was, I guess, because Sheriff Meeker is such a great character, and I think somebody asked, did he ever die in any of your scripts? And he's like, actually, he did. There was a great fight between him and Michael in the basement, and it ended with him killing the sheriff and the house going up in flames, and that's why they go to the roof. Like, that, there was the whole set piece of them going on the roof was because there was nowhere else to go, and the house is on fire, and, you know, that whole thing is like, but money, had to cut it all out. But so I thought that was really fascinating, getting to hear a lot of these little stories about what could have been. So I don't know, Halloween 4 is fun, but yeah, man, bring on yours.
I've tried. and Brian Collins is very proud of the fact that I've turned around on 4. 4, I think, was rediscovered for me in that big box set.
Yeah.
When the big box set came out, and I just kind of watched them all in a row, and I said, you know what, Halloween 4 is not as bad as I made it out to be. 5 is still bad, though.
Yeah, 5 is terrible. Yeah. Anyway, slice it.
I want to hear you talk about this one, because I was actually meant to be at the screening. I heard you were going at the last minute, and I was told a little bit
I have my
too late.
computer pulled up, everybody, and right now I have the screen open on IMDb to a 1987 film called Anguish.
Which I talked about 3 months ago.
You did talk about 3 months ago, and I closed my ears because I didn't want to know anything about it.
It's a really cool
but it is an incredible film.
Yes.
It is a revelation, this film. I want all of you to go out there on eBay and try to find it. A really good friend, a mutual friend of ours, had hosted a screening night up at his house, and went like full bore on rolling out a meal that was themed to this film.
Was it birds and snails?
It was Italian food, and then there was like eyes, all sorts of eye foods, you know, so everything was eye shaped, or, you know, it was really cool.
I actually showed the opening scene from this in my class this year as an example of kind of an anxiety inducing scene with the bird behind the hutch.
God. Oh, the bird behind the hutch.
Yeah.
Anyways, so just to jump into what it is, Zelda Rubinstein, Michael Lerner. Zelda Rubinstein plays kind of an overbearing mother, and Michael Lerner is an eye doctor, and he collects people's eyes for his mom, and there's a sinister purpose behind it. But there is a much larger twist that I will not reveal in this film that is part of this movie and makes it so unique. And I had a lot of people come to me after the screening, and they were like, Ryan, you got to find the rights to this and remake it. And I was like, I don't know if a film like this would survive today because of some very sensitive topics that that are played out in the original film and would never survive today.
Someone would have to have a radical revision of it.
A radical revision. Yeah. But let me tell you, I mean, it is how do you pronounce the director's name?
Big ass Luna.
Big ass Luna?
If you're Australian, that's how you'd say it.
Writer and director. And it's a film that's just got plenty of tension and weird. There's a lot of absurdity to it. But that bird sequence you're talking about, there's a moment in the very beginning of the movie where Michael Lerner has his bird out, and the bird flies around the house, and Zelda Rubinstein's like, "Get the bird! Get the bird!
Did you get it?
Get it!" And then the bird flies behind his hutch and is like, literally, the camera is between the hutch and the wall, and this bird is just sliding down. You see its little claws trying to find purchase on the wall, and then they grab like a letter opener.
It's like a coat hanger or something.
It's like a letter opener, and he stabs into the back of the hutch to get to the bird and literally open the wood. And you see the camera is positioned still behind the hutch, and you see this letter opener just skewer right through the back, right in front of this bird. And you're like, oh my God, they're going to kill this bird.
Yeah.
It's a real bird.
It is like, because the bird's struggling, and the whole scene, you're just like, oh my God, they're going to kill the bird. They can't kill the bird. And it's so tense. It's like an anxiety attack on screen.
And it certainly sets the tone for the intensity of the rest of the film. And again, I wish I could go into more details about it, but it's just best left.
Yeah, it's a big twisty movie.
Yeah, it's just best left going, completely cold, not knowing too much about it. But look up the poster. It's got Zelda Rubinstein standing in front of a wall of eyes, and it says, "The eyes of the city are mine."
So that's only out on a DVD still?
I think so.
I have a
Blue
DVD
Underground,
of it.
I think, put out a DVD of it, but it's out of print. And
it's not too expensive because I bought it a couple of months ago, and I wouldn't have got it if it was more than like $35.
Yeah, and the what we watched it on is a German import Blu-ray.
Oh, so it exists.
Yeah. But please check this film out. It's one that's not discussed enough. I remember Roy Lee many years ago got the rights to it and was going to remake it, but that kind of fell by the wayside. But it is just like one of those horror gems. When you talk about Discovery, Elric, and you talk about chasing the dragon, I had this thrill. I sat there and I was just like, oh my God, this is fantastic.
And I only remember parts of it, so I was so bummed. I only found out about it like last minute. I was like, I really wanted to, though.
And I had known elements of it going in, but it didn't ruin anything for me, because once I knew the key components of it, I was like, I want to see how that plays out. Yeah. It stoked my curiosity even further, because even though I knew some big reveals, I was like, no, that doesn't add up for me. I don't know how that comes into play in this movie, and now I want to see how the filmmaker narratively pieced it all together. So
we got to look up to see if he did other horror films. I mean, I know he did a lot of other films, but I'm curious about him now.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Wonderful movie.
Nice.
Well, I'll start by discussing that on our Texas episode where we were discussing the scariest films that we'd ever seen, I mentioned this incredibly deep cut called Sounds of Silence from 1989, which at the time you could only get on VHS. For the longest time, it's only been available on VHS. And then as soon as we did the episode, people started messaging me and said, it's on Amazon Prime now. So I rewatched it.
Really?
Yeah, it's on Amazon Prime now.
Shit, I gotta add it.
So it is way zanier than I remember. This movie scared the shit out of me when I was a kid. And I will say, and some of our Shockwaves listeners watched it, and I've been talking with them in the fan group. It still has some like super creepy scenes, but it definitely, when you watch it on VHS, it's very dark. It's a creepy kid movie. So like creepy ghost kids, dark on VHS. But when I was watching it on Amazon Prime, it's just like broad daylight. So
but just to prove my point, Rob's now looking at a picture of Simon and Garfunkel. See, that happens every time. You cannot get around
Sounds
this.
of Silence, 1989. But yeah, it's also this zany soundtrack that I had completely forgotten about, but the soundtrack is pretty fucking bonkers. That said, it's still got a really spooky premise about a family that inherits an orphanage in Sweden and goes there with their deaf son, and only he can sense these kind of ghost kids. Like there was a fire, it used to be an orphanage, and the thing burnt to the ground and all the kids died inside, and he is the only one who can sense it. So super low budget, super hard to find up until this right now. But yeah, it's still, if you're looking for deep cuts and can be a little bit forgiving of the fact that it's now kind of a lot brighter than it used to be. It's still a fun little romp.
It's funny. I just found it on Amazon Prime, and now it's showing me all these other films I didn't realize were on Prime now. Zombie Nightmare with Tia
Mausoleum.
Carrera.
Mausoleum's fun.
Yeah. Spontaneous Combustion.
Devil's Hand.
Devil's Hand.
Whoa.
The Bean.
That is
Jesus.
cool.
I met the lead of that once. That's all.
Fun stuff on Amazon Prime.
Very random. Okay, one of the ones, I saw a couple great bonkers ones, but we'll get to that in a second. One, again, talking about Revelations, even though I've seen this, Let's Scare Jessica to Death in 16 millimeter, and it's just one of my favorite horror films. This really, I've only seen it once on DVD and loved it, but this just like, it has all the things I look for in a horror film, that kind of eerie vibe. It also actually had a moment which was kind of scary because like just when the vampire / ghostly character comes into frame, the film burned. And so everyone in the theater just gasped because this is like a very rare print, and suddenly some of that print is no longer existing in front of your eyes.
No.
So it's just like, it was kind of crazy. And they luckily could fix it. There was a lot of Mike Williamson jokes in the background. Like Brian Cons was like, they're calling Mike for help. This is what happens. And there's a lot of that going on behind us. But the film itself, it's again another film that it's kind of just lost in the shuffle right now. It's not on Blu-ray. Incredibly atmospheric, though, and again, even the parts that don't work as well, and the sound design, the sound work of this film, beyond she has a lot of voiceover where you really get into her head, but the actual sound design goes from a classical score to, by the end, it's full goblin experimental sound design, and there's just lots of little images you'll never forget from this movie, including just this woman coming up wearing white out of the water, not all the way out, just her with her hands raised. That's the scariest part because you don't see her face. What a good movie that film is.
You'll enjoy this. The director of Sweet Sweet Lonely Girl, who is a Wallingford, Connecticut resident, which is
I could see it all over that movie.
Exactly, it is all over that film, and I would love to do a double feature of Let's Scare Jessica to Death and Sweet Sweet Lonely Girl.
I've never seen Sweet Sweet Lonely Girl.
Yeah, it's really good. It's on Shudder. But cool. He relocated to a part of town where the house from Let's Scare Jessica to Death is. It's very close, and he sent me photos of it, and boy, is this place creepy.
Yeah, and it's still there. And I think it was up for sale because I know another podcaster who was going there, like on tours and stuff. So yeah, it'd be what an amazing, and that would be an interesting remake.
Does it still have the actual vineyard attached, or was it an orchard?
If that, who knows if they're even located the same location.
In the same location,
but it has got that. Yeah, it's just a kind of interesting build to it. But anyway, great movie, and hopefully one day the gods. I don't know. It's a company that I think deals have started going through again. So
Paramount.
Yeah.
Oh, Paramount.
That's John Hancock, the guy who started Jaws 2 and then was fired off Jaws 2.
No.
For something to do with Roy Scheider's, what's the character, the wife character? I think he had some
Lorraine
issue.
Gary, really?
I think there's some issue between.
The whole
he did
story?
like 2 weeks on it. I know that.
Yeah.
And then he got canned.
Yeah.
What a house. We're looking at pictures of the house.
Well, Jaws 2 came out great, so there we go.
It's okay.
Oh, wow, that house is incredible.
Not as good as Jaws 4, but
Oh, Jesus.
Junkadoo. Don't forget Junkadoo.
Junkaroo.
Junkaroo. Okay,
that's
that's the most obscure trivia reference.
We asked that question, and then we asked
the
it again
reggae dance
2
party
weeks
that
later.
Michael Caine goes to.
We asked it trivia, what is the reggae celebration that's happening in Jaws 4? And the answer was Junkaroo. And then 2 weeks later, Jared asked the question again, just because he's like, I bet you guys forgot it. And everybody got it wrong.
Everyone forgot it, but I'm committing it to memory now.
So now we all know it's Junkaroo.
Great movie.
I'm making my way through some more Vinegar Syndrome titles, and here's one that I'd never even heard of called Blue Vengeance that they just put out, and it's from 1989 from a filmmaker named J. Christian Igvordsen, and God, what to say? It's. I mean, listen, you never know what you're going to get, especially with Vinegar Syndrome. So this is so apparently this guy had written and directed a bunch of movies in New York in the 80s, especially during the time when you could make a VHS deal and kind of that business was thriving. And so this was his attempt at a very ambitious attempt at a horror movie, which he'd never done before. And so basically it's like this metalhead convicted killer named Mark Trex who escapes from an asylum right away and he fakes his death by killing a hitchhiker and taking one of his teeth out and putting it in his mouth and then setting everything ablaze. And basically he's stalking the members of an old metal band because I think it's because one of their songs, he wants to fulfill one of their songs. I guess that's what it is. And simultaneously, the guy that put him away, apparently it's been 10 years. And so the guy that put him away, which is the guy that wrote and directed the movie, is the detective who accidentally shot his partner. So he's got that whole, basically it's a really ambitious script that feels like that 80s action movie sort of deal, like with the conflicted cop. Like, it's totally like The Seven and The First Power if they had no money to pull it off at all. And so that's the charm of it, is that it's like, wow, they're trying really hard. And there is kind of a weird, like, I think it's my love and affection for New York City in that time period, because they keep going back to a club, which they never say anywhere in the special features if this is it, but I am 99.9% sure it's the CBGB's, because I used to hang out at CB's. I played there several times, and just from the way the door is positioned and like even the bands like that play, because there's a bunch of like rock bands and stuff that play there. Because one of the witnesses is a photographer that's always taking pictures of bands or something like that. And so part of my affection immediately is because I think a lot of it takes place at CB's, like even the back room and stuff like that. And so this is a really bizarre metal serial killer movie of the lo-fi variety.
I'm in.
But yeah, that's the thing, is like, I think there's still something to
really
it
charming
that you might appreciate it. And you know, again, Vinegar is doing a really kick-out. I mean, they restored this thing. I think I've been watching a lot of them. I think this is the one where the director's like, this looks better than it ever has, because they scanned it as like a whole 4K thing, 2K scan from the original negatives. But also, it's kind of neat. I haven't even made my way through all the features yet. There's an interview. Michael Gingold does an interview with the main guy on it, which is always nice, because Michael's kind of obviously formerly at Fangoria, and he does a lot of stuff for Remorque now, and now back at Fangoria. But he's kind of an expert when it comes to New York horror. Like, I think he's on the Basket Case Blu-ray as well, because he just, when it comes to New York locations and horror, he always kind of knows a lot about it. But I haven't even watched this yet. The co-writer there's an unreleased movie he made called The First Man, which is included in its entirety as a bonus feature, and it stars Heather Graham, Lisa Zane, Ted Raimi, Leslie Ann Warren. Kind of like, so.
Oh my gosh.
I haven't gone to it yet, but for that alone, I'm kind of like, you know what? For these kind of weirdo movies, I like that Vinegar Syndrome is doing this whole package where, well, let's throw in this extra movie we guarantee you've never seen.
And they have the best covers, I think.
They do. They do.
It always makes you want to buy it.
Yeah.
Sometimes regret it.
Yeah.
Sometimes not. Sometimes.
So Blue Vengeance is going to blow your mind.
Excellent.
Wait. I watched, I'll do this really quick, but I watched Nightmare Sisters, the Vinegar Syndrome movies.
I'm watching that this week.
It's every bit as trashy as I remember it. I mean, I literally...
Oh, so you have seen it in the past?
I saw it when I was a kid.
Okay.
I saw it like on USA Up All Night, but it was a TV version, I think. And my TV's next to a very large picture window, and I live in a very small little townhouse community, and people could walk by down the courtyard and see immediately what I'm watching, So I'm watching these Scream Queens get nerdy, and I'm like, oh, they're so cute, and then razzle dazzle, they're suddenly naked all the time. And I
wasn't kidding you.
No, you weren't
kidding
me.
me.
So I just kind of slowly closed my picture window drapes, and it's just like, all right, I'm going to watch this like a perv. And it's very trashy, a lot of fun. So I followed that up. I had some time this weekend by myself, and I put on a Rob G. Dread Central Presents release.
Oh, no.
Terrifier. I opened up my curtains and said,
everyone will see Terrifier.
I'm going to let the light in.
Did you immediately resume the
Terrifier began, and I slowly closed them back again because I looked like a fucking maniac.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, Rob, I kind of went in going, I'm really going to hate this. I'm not going to have a pleasant experience. I'm just, it's just probably going to be a kind of lowbrow slasher movie. And I kind of liked it. I actually kind of liked it. I mean, like, it didn't...
Can we get that on the poster? I actually kind of liked it.
I actually kind of liked it.
I mean, it just reminded me of the kind of sleazy shit I would discover on home video in like 1991. The clown works. Art the Clown is really fucking creepy. I like the girls. Like, I thought there's a turn in the movie I wish did not happen, and because from that point on, the film became less interesting to me. But, to give you a little bit of example, there's a really great moment where Art the Clown is getting beaten on. Like, he's getting beaten. And I'm like, wow, okay, this is really cool. And then he does something that you do not expect from a slasher. He pulls out a fucking gun and he shoots his attacker.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, all right, I'm paying attention. There's some interesting turns in this. that said, there's some really grisly shit that I don't know. Maybe in my like age of 41, I don't respond to as I did once when I was like 19. But kudos to the effects team for pulling off some of the really nasty bits in this movie. I mean, they're really nasty.
Which is the writer-director. I have to give credit. So
it's Damien?
Damien Leone is known, he's primarily an effects artist. He's been writing, directing stuff. And so I think that's what stands out the most about this is because he comes from an effects background. He really focused on that. And there is a show-stopping kill midway through.
There is,
which, to be frank, really offended me the first time I saw it.
It's brutal.
But again, I think you're right. Like because my friend's kid is 16 and he's studying effects and he's like, dude, I can't wait to see Terrifier. I heard about all this. And so I'm like, I get it. If I was your age, I would see it.
And that same kid was sitting behind me at Let's Scare Jessica to Death. And I was really impressed by that.
He came and sat in on my class at USC a couple times.
Oh, Jesus. Wait a minute. He's under the table. But no, listen, it's as a film that, is finding its way out into the horror crowd. I'm seeing a lot of people's social media about it and talk about it on Instagram and Twitter and all that stuff. I think it's certainly effective. Narratively, I think it kind of loses its steam by the halfway point, and I kind of wish it maintained that inventiveness and ingenuity and maintain the kind of motor that you get through that first half. But like when he's sitting there menacing those two girls at the pizza place, I was just like, ugh, making my skin crawl.
It's tough for me to talk about this movie because obviously I'm biased in that I helped put it out. But it was actually I got to give credit to Uncle Creepy from Dread Central. This was his move. This was selected before I started my job. So it's not a Rob G pick.
Kudos to Uncle Creepy.
And I will, people know my tastes. It's a little on the too mean-spirited side.
Yeah, it's very incredible.
But that said, I think Damien did an incredible job, especially with the effects. And I do got to give a lot of credit to David Thornton because, this Art the Clown character has existed in shorts and previous anthologies. And David Thornton plays Art and he's terrific. He really kind of embraces the whole madness of playing a quote unquote horror icon. And so
All Hallows Eve, which is also directed by Damien.
That was an anthology.
That's an anthology.
And so there's one segment in it that features the clown. It's a different actor who plays him.
Interesting.
But Terrifier was his attempt to take that character and that short and make a full-length feature. You don't really need to see the short to appreciate the full feature.
Listen,
look, I appreciate that.
They're doing it. I like the fact that they're doing it on a Hollywood level with the Conjuring movies, and they're spinning off characters and what like that, stuff like that. And I like that simmering behind the scenes on the kind of scrappy independent horror scene. There's someone who is finding their way and creating a little bit of a world. That's great.
Yeah.
But again, it's not going to be for everybody, and it was just borderline, almost not for me. But at the end of the day, I was like, all right, I'm going to hold on to this one because there's some really gnarly shit in it, and I'm going to probably show it off to somebody at some point. So,
very cool.
Nice. I'll talk about some of my titles that I picked up while we were at Texas Frightmare. So I went by the Severin booth and I got Beyond the Seventh Door.
Oh boy. Sierra, you listening or what?
That was such a trip.
I come for you. I come for you soon. I get you. Don't worry.
Oh my God. He was like the most incompetent boyfriend ever. And I guess they weren't really dating. They just had broken up. I couldn't really understand the relationship.
He was getting back into her heart.
He was a bit off to begin with. Man, he's just, somebody said Tommy Wiseau.
It's very mixed with, who's the killer from The Untouchables and in the remake of The Hills of Ice.
Oh, you're talking about,
I can't remember his name. Just
Billy Drago.
Billy Drago.
He looks
exactly like a mixture of those.
It's kind of like a combination between the two, and he keeps taking his shirt off, which is, again, you're just like, I don't know how I feel about any of this. Completely incompetent person whatsoever. There's one point where she's almost drowning, and after this has been going on for 15 minutes, you see him go, oh wait, I think I have a rope. What the fuck? You brought one thing with you into this maze. Anyway, the whole setup, we've talked about it before, so I won't talk about it for very long, but it's pretty much, it's like Saw if Saw was SOV.
Yeah.
It's two people are going to rob this rich guy and somehow end up in his basement torture maze where they have to do these traps and puzzles every room. But it's seriously the two most incompetent people ever, so it's not like they're figuring out the puzzles exactly as much as kind of happening depending upon the answers. But that said, yeah, it's definitely an interesting
It's a party
watch.
film. Watch it as a party.
I see a young Lee Winnell and James Wan renting this from a video store somewhere. We have to ask.
Yeah.
I have to know if they've ever seen this film.
Amazing.
Oh my God. So yeah, there was that. It's fun. I will definitely say it's fun. But then I also went by the Arrow booth and picked up the new Hellraiser box set that has 1, 2, 3, and this absolutely beautiful documentary. It's got tons of bonus features. There's a whole 4th disc that's just kind of like bonus
Leviathan,
features.
I think it's called.
Yeah, Leviathan documentary. It's beautiful. So I watched 1 and 2, but the one I want to talk about is 3. Because 3,
of course you do.
Of course
What
I
a
do.
shock. Left field turn.
Because 1 and 2 I have deep loves for, but they're just very dark movies.
Because like CD Cinnabite heads, my
know.
Damn
Yeah.
straight.
I
And
think
JP
3 has
Monroe.
always 3 has always perplexed me because honestly, it's my fave. Out of the entire series, like I love 1, 2 is brutal and gets even more graphic, but I fucking love 3.
You love the charms of Monroe. If
Oh
he
my
walked
God.
up, if he walked up to you with a
He
rose
has-
and was like, "Hi, Bekah."
JP
He has
Monroe.
such good boots. I do have to say. I don't like. My favorite scene though is he's smoking a cigarette while having sex with the girl,
yeah.
and he has his hand on both of her breasts, and the cigarette, like you can see the ash going down, and the whole time I'm like, it's gonna fall on her, it's gonna fall, and then it doesn't. But
Your bird anxiety
he
all
has,
over again.
yeah,
And she's tied up.
and she's tied up.
Yeah, no, that was a scene. I remember when that specifically came out on VHS. I was like, I'm just going to cut right to that scene.
Yeah,
I need to see what this is all about.
It's crazy. Yeah, so 3 for me is the fun Hellraiser. And apparently it was supposed to be a lot darker. It was, I watched the fantastic documentaries. It was written by Tony Randall, who directed 2. And he was intended to direct 3, but he actually thought he was going to make it too dark and too bleak. And so they brought in Anthony Hickox to do it. And then it kind of became Hellraiser in a club. And Pinhead actually has like almost witty retorts in this, and it does get more fun where the Cenobites get almost ironic. I mean, they were always kind of ironic, but instead of just piercing nipples and tying leather to skin, it becomes much more of like, you now have CDs coming out of your head and things like that. And
Well, Anthony Hickox did Waxworks, we should mention. And
Yep.
so in just by default, he's that kind of filmmaker.
Yeah.
Where he kind of goes for the fun horror.
And I remember now why I loved it so much as a kid was I totally wanted to live at this club. I mean, yeah, like JP Monroe is like, okay, but this club, I mean, like it had great artwork. The music was good. I mean, the title track that they used was the Soup Dragons, which was okay. But I mean, the rest of the time they're playing like KMFDM and Motorhead.
Oh, yeah.
This fucking awesome club. And then they've got that fancy restaurant next door where all of JP's like Rose girls go to. And it was just like a great club. And he lived upstairs and really good artwork. And yeah, so I just really wanted to be there. Really good artwork.
And his boots are so clean.
Yeah. So it was just, and this is the first one where we kind of get Pinhead's backstory because it's the first one where we see Captain
that part
Elliot
was
Spencer.
the part that stayed with me.
Yeah. So it's just a fun
It
film.
is fun.
And
It's trash. but
I
it's
will
fun.
say, I wanted this film's ending to continue part 4 so bad because in the ending, Terry Farrell, who's our lead, who I have total woman crush on when she was Jadzia Dax on
Yeah,
Deep
from-
Space
yep.
Nine.
Star Trek.
So at the end of the film, she puts the lament configuration box into a wet concrete. And then it kind of shows this time lapse and this building has grown up around it. But the whole building, it's got lament configurations everywhere and there's puzzle boxes on the floor. And that actually continued in the comics. There's a comic about the building that was actually designed after the lament configuration. And depending on how you walk down the walls, the hallways, you could actually open the box. And I wish they had kind of continued
Don't
that.
they do a little bit of it in Bloodline? I can't remember.
Not enough.
Because I know Bloodline is like 4 different stories, but I thought they did a slight continuation of the building.
I think there is a sleigh.
If
Right?
so, they
been
needed
so long,
more.
I don't
it's
remember.
such like that ending is so cool, and you're like, oh my god, the building is a puzzle box, and then I don't remember it going anywhere.
I mean, the
before.
spaceship wasn't it? The
spaceship
turned
was
into
a puzzle box.
Oh,
Yeah, but that's Pinhead in space.
Speaking of which, I did forget because we did just talk about Texas Frightmare, and I even though I didn't do too much crazy stuff because I wasn't there long, I did have to thank Rob for making one of my weird dreams come true, which is it sounds lame, but Clive Barker for me was actually more important for me than Stephen King, even though I love King's work. I grew up, it was like Barker's work that unlocked something in me in terms of the kind of darker dreams, and so Rob kind of talked to somebody, and one of our listeners, shout out
Freddie.
to Freddie.
Freddie's girlfriend. was
Yeah, and I
Girlfriend
kind
was
of
kind of taking care of
his
Clive for the
family.
weekend.
yeah, I got
Yeah.
whisked at the very end of the festival into a private room, in a room where he's just with a couple people, and I
I
got
told
to,
you, be prepared. If it happens, it's
yeah.
going to be quick, and it's only going to be you.
And it was cool because most people kind of, getting things signed, it was more about the signature, and I just kind of wanted to get real personal for just a second with him, and I literally just thanked him for his imagination and what that unlocked in me. And he, as I was walking away, looked up again and said, "Thank you for that." Like, it was really cool. Like, and sometimes like there's little moments I know where we meet so many people, and we're lucky that listeners who probably dream of meeting some of these people. Sometimes we don't take it all in, but meeting Romero at one point, just even a handshake, and this were probably two of those moments I'll always kind of cherish. And he seemed in good form to me. He was shaking hands and like smiling, and so that was super cool. So on the Barker front, that was really rich. So thanks, Rob, for
Clive,
making that happen.
Yeah.
And then from serious to talking about part threes, here is your bonkers pick of the year, people. You will not want to turn off right now. Zombie 3.
Yes.
Holy fucking shit, man. This is a movie I'd never seen. I'd heard the stories. As I'll always say, I'll watch Fulci anywhere, anytime. Even half-finished Fulci. But there are some amazing stories on this. Okay, for one, at first, I wasn't sure what I was watching. Okay, it's like, the Weird Moss from Jody Verrill. It's like if you had the Jody Verrill story, right, directed somewhat by Fulci, but also by the guy who did Troll 2. Because that's the aesthetic we're getting at parts of this movie.
Yes.
And then if suddenly it just became Birdemic for a while, that is basically this movie in a nutshell. It changes tones like wild. Basically, every 7 minutes you're watching a new movie, which is nice. It's like an anthology, basically. The opening was shot by Bruno Mattei. So first, the logistics story. This is a weird movie. Fulci directed about half of it, and what happened was he apparently, Fragasso really, who wrote it, tells the story that basically Fulci is a really old school director, and everything had to be prepared like precisely for him to make a movie he wanted to make, and the producers fucked him at the last minute and rushed it into production, and so he was really unhappy on the production. He always felt like they're behind, couldn't get the things he wanted, and at a certain point he started getting a little sick, and then the producers wrapped production. Towards the end of production, he kind of had said behind the scenes he would get his revenge in some way. What his revenge ended up being is at the end he shot 40 minutes of people in a canoe, and when he showed the final cut, so it's this movie with all this action, then the movie would have been like 40 minutes long, and then there's 40 minutes of like canoe sequences of just characters canoeing, and apparently they were laughing because that was his revenge. It was like, fuck you, this is what you get for fucking me. And so of course, unfortunately, then the producers looked in and went, we're not releasing, this movie's way too short. And Bruno Mattei, who you guys look him up, he's directed literally 1,000 movies, he happened to be in the Philippines. So again, this is also like a Corman prison movie because it's shot in the Philippines, which only means bonkers. Like,
which
Philippines
also means
is the crazy.
Filipino zombies.
Oh my God. Filipino jumping out of trees, springing out of boxes. They jump out of every little orifice. It's crazy. They really do. They do. They jump out of, no, literally. Trust me. There's a scene in this movie where I'm being accurate. And so I guess he was going there to shoot a Richard Harris film, and they're like, well, you got time anyway. Can you shoot the rest of this movie? And he was good friends with Fulci, and Fulci gave his blessing. Fulci, unfortunately, was getting really bad. This is really, a really bad stage for him. And so him and Fragasso had to rewrite this. And man, what you get this weird green light, almost like that Vertigo green light you get in a lot of sequences where I knew, without knowing any of the story, that I was watching the parts Fulci wasn't shooting, because there's nothing like his aesthetic. Like, it just felt kind of cheesy and cheap, kind of like Troll 2. But those parts are also really bonkers and fun. And then there's moments where you're watching really a Fulci film where, I don't know, there's some really nice moments. There's a moment like where there's a bald zombie with a big blade just comes out and he's like trying to chop her, and it's like fucking scary for a beat. But this is like a virus outbreak movie. This is the line that I wrote down. One thing's for sure, the Death 1 compound is far more dangerous than any of us ever imagined. You're like, you called it the Death 1 compound, man. How did it not spread? Anyway, but there is a sequence in here where it goes full birdemic. Like, and all these birds are going into the thing.
Oh, it actually is birds. Yeah, like, I thought you were using that as like a comparison for the zombies.
Yeah, basically there's a virus, and that goes into a body, then government decides to burn the body, and it's the burning of the body that releases it into nature, and then everything gets affected. And then the military scenes are terrible, and they're probably all Bruno Mattei stuff. There's guys in contamination suits, that's all Bruno Mattei stuff. That's okay, but as a whole, it's just so freaking crazy and fun. And there's two moments in it where they're like just two absolute, like, holy like you will fly back in your chair. They're so crazy. It's worth buying this just for these two moments. One is good pregnancy horror, which I'm always a fan of, and it's utterly crazy moment. And the other one is a head that does something. It's pretty wild. And yeah, I don't know. These are the kind of movies I live for. Like, I need a couple of these a year to keep me excited. Just how you're talking about good movies. Like, this is not a boring movie, which means it's a good movie.
Here's the funny thing. So Severin Films had put out the Blu-rays of this Zombie 3, Zombie 4.
I bought this one so I'll watch for it for next week.
Yeah,
for sure.
Zombie 3, Zombie 4, and Shocking Truth, aka Terminator 2,
Yep.
Shocking Truth.
Can't wait
I'm
for
going to
that.
try to catch up Zombie 4 with it.
Yeah, but Severin years ago had put out a DVD box set of Zombie 3, 4, and Zombie 5 Killing Birds. And so I went up to, because if I buy the Blu-rays, I just get rid of my DVDs. So I went up to David Gregory from Severin, and I was like, you got Zombie 2 as 3 and 4. I was like, you're going to do Zombie 5, right? Killing Birds? And he's like, well, I don't know about that one. And I'm just like, come on, man.
Yeah,
you're doing these on Blue. You have to do Zombie 5.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there's
a lot of fun stuff. It's not, but nowhere near classic Fulci, of course, as a film. But it's fun. I love that they finished this. I love that they put enough on this movie to make it an entertainment movie. And so, yeah, this is definitely, if you like your holy fucking shit, this satisfies, man. And the Filipino stuff does make all the difference, because the way they're jumping around, it's like no zombies you've really seen.
It's like they've never seen a zombie movie.
No.
And they hired these Filipino extras.
Yeah, and there's some just bizarre.
Be a monster or something.
Yeah. I love this kind of stuff, but be prepared. Be warned if you're spending human money on it. Warning.
Anything else on your end?
Yeah, I dug into the Scream Factory It's Alive collection.
Oh, cool.
So I watched It's Alive. It's Alive, I think, is my favorite Coen
really?
movie. Yeah.
And one of my favorite horror performances of all time by the man.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. It's probably my favorite Larry Cohen, just because even though I love Q to death, I think the accessibility to It's Alive works so well, the relatability, because I think
it's very grounded for a horror film compared to all his other films.
Yeah, like the stuff is out there.
Yeah, everything's pretty over the top.
Q is out there.
The first 5 minutes, you meet John P. Ryan and his family, and his wife is going to have a baby, and
they're older, which I like, which means they're kind of scared of that.
Yes.
Like having a baby a little older, and that's
I just like there's a rhythm to Cohen's dialogue, and I don't know if the actors most of the time are improvising, but there's a moment where he goes into the waiting room and he's hanging out with all these other expecting fathers, and they're talking about themes that are playing into the film, but on a level that feels normal. It feels real. Like they're talking about, there's so much lead in the water, and there's we're thinking about all these chemicals we're injecting, and meanwhile there's a guy banging on the machine trying to get a Coke, and John comes over and he's just like, what are you doing? Let me put $1 in there. Go sit down, have a smoke, relax, and there's just there's such a naturalism to everything that's in this film, and then there's the introduction of the monster baby.
An outrageous sequence, which is amazing.
It's
such
terrifying,
a good scene.
terrifying. But I did realize that rewatching it for whatever time I've seen this, how many times I've seen this, it does kind of fall into a problem with its narrative rhythm, because it all gets contained to the Davies family house, where the baby has arrived, and it's just a lot of slow, meticulous creeping around, investigating, looking.
Baby killer POV,
reacting to sounds. And this goes on for a while, and I feel that's where it kind of falters. But then it wraps up at the end really nicely. And I immediately started jumping in. I jumped into the sequel, and I'm going to reserve that for the next week. But again, you're dealing with characters who feel so natural.
The first two are, and then 3 is just utterly bonkers.
Yeah, I've got 2 and 3 to watch. I got the box set as well.
Frederick Forrest is the lead in the second one, I remember. But Ryan comes back into it. So we'll talk about that. It's been a while, but I do like that film.
The third one has this kind of weird AIDS allegory, because it's like,
send them to an island.
Yes, because he's trying to. I just remember he's trying to have sex with some woman he picked up on the street, and she's like, "Ew, you're the man that had that baby. You're responsible. I don't want to touch you. I don't want you inside me." And you're like, "Fuck, man, that's heavy. Really heavy." So there's a lot of great themes in this trilogy, and I think next to when you talk about horror trilogy is kind of off-kilter ones. I always reach to The Omen, because The Omen I love Omen 1, 2, and 3, because as a collection they work so well. It's Alive is probably next in line for me. It's like one of those series of films that doesn't get discussed enough, doesn't get analyzed enough.
Well, it's when you have the same author, that's how you can contain something. You can really keep the consistency of the vision. Yeah, he's a really good writer. That's the one thing. Like, he's a good director and stuff, and he's always fun, but he's always been able to write. He can tell a story. You know? That's fun. Cool.
So that's what I got.
I have 2 more super quick ones that I'll drop. I watched Rockula, which is now on Amazon Prime.
Did somebody watch Rockula already?
She watched Rockula. She brought a Rockula. This is her second time.
This is my second time watching Rockula. That's why I said I'd breeze through it. It's on Amazon Prime. If you want to see Dean Cameron rap and Bo Diddley in spandex, there you go. It's kind of a fun movie. I mean, the music sucks. I can't say that the plot makes a lot of sense, but it's fun. But then I'm going to mention this one because I'm hoping that somebody will watch it and then message me on Twitter or find me on our the fan group, because I really want to talk about it with somebody. Altered Hours, which is also on Amazon. I don't think it's Prime. I think I paid like $3 for it. It's from 2016 and it's listed as sci-fi. So sorry if this isn't horror enough for people, but it is so low budget, but it's such a cool premise. I'm not as fond as where it went in the third act, but the first 2, I was so into this thinking that I'd found this incredible gem. It's about a junkie who can't sleep because he had this kind of past event that you don't find out what it is yet, but he had this horrible event in his life and he can't sleep now, and he has to take hardcore drugs to get to sleep. And he eventually, his dealer turns him on to this new drug called Z. And the dealer's kind of like, I don't know where I got it from. This guy, chemist, makes it. I don't know, but he says it's like really good for sleeping. And he starts using it and he can sleep like crazy, but he starts flashing to the future. So he'll suddenly get these flashes where he sees himself in future situations. So he will flash to just a couple days in the future. And some of the flashes start getting really twisted to the point of him being in a police precinct being questioned for kidnapping the girl across the street, who's like a little girl. And so he has to keep doing the drug to see what's going to happen. But every time he does the drug, he forgets what he was doing during the drug. And so it gets really trippy and time travel-y at the same time. And then the dealer's girlfriend becomes a really pivotal character as well. Great freaking premise. It went on way too long. The movie was almost 2 hours long. If this had been like a tight, like 80, this would have been like my find of the year. But that said, I really like the premise and I really like the first 2 acts. I was not as fond as where it went. But yeah, if you're into sci-fi kind of time crimesy-ish stuff, this was a really fun watch.
Altered Hours.
Altered Hours. Yes.
My last thing, I am going to eat some of my own words. I always think that at Texas Frightmare, I was fortunate enough to host the Arrow video panel with Ewan and Louise and that whole crew, and we had a great chat. I've always been curious about how their business model works and differs from the companies that we talk to, like Scream Factory and Severin, etc. And so that was a lot of fun. I got to take home the Region B version of The Thing, which, again, quite frankly, I was like, well, it's kind of redundant. I already have the Scream Factory one, and it looks great. It's got all the features. I don't need the Region B one. But I got it, and I'm a little biased because the guy that did the new features is a guy named Daniel Griffith, who's an excellent documentary filmmaker. He had done the documentary that's on From a Whisper to a Scream, which is one of my all-time favorites.
He won a Ronda this year for the Suspiria doc, which both Rob and I are on.
Which he definitely deserved. And the Donnie Darko doc, which I was fortunate to be a part of. And so he did new features for this, and I remember just teasing him like, well, what else how are you going to top this Scream Factory one? And he's like, by doing a complete 180 and not doing what they did at all. And so he did 2 featurettes on here. The first one's called, and actually they're all like, first one's almost full length, and it's called Who Goes There in Search of the Thing. Right. And what's cool about this is it goes back to the original short story and tracks the history of how basically every iteration of The Thing, starting from the original short story through the the Howard Hawks movie, through John Carpenter adapting it, etc. And so I thought that was fascinating, including the inspiration from the original author, who I'm drawing a blank at the moment, but he was just saying that when he was a young kid, his mom was a twin. And so it was the idea of when his aunt would come into the room and realizing it's not his mom. And that was kind of the kernel of the idea that inspired the original Thing. And so I was completely fascinated by how that story evolved over the course of, all those years from, story to film to remake, etc. So that was great. And then the second feature he did on there is called 1982, One Amazing Summer. And it literally tracks everything that came out in 1982 from, all these journalists and film fans and stuff, because it was kind of a ridiculously incredible year, including E.T., which was the movie that kind of killed The Thing in the sense that was the alien movie everybody wanted to go see. And The Transfer, I didn't think you could get better than the Scream Factory one because Dean Cundy approved that, but apparently Dean Cundy and John Carpenter approved the Arrow one, which is a 4K scan.
Oh, shit.
And it actually does look pretty fucking amazing. Like flawless. So it actually, it's very close, but I think they might have a tiny, tiny, tiny better transfer. Anyway, I'm happy to own both.
Yeah,
so there you go.
I have both. I have to crack that one open.
Yeah, I think, and I think starting with those features, you'll be pleasantly surprised how fun they are.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah. So there you go. The Thing from Arrow.
There's one last one I want to mention because our guests don't mind waiting. I can look right them in the eye when I say that. This movie, I have to mention it. It's another Severin film, and it just kind of literally blew my socks off. That's Threads. I finally caught up to it. This movie
Why do we have to end on this one, Kane?
Because
Could
the
we
world
have
will
ended
end.
on Rockula?
Hey, maybe it connects a little bit to Endless in some ways. But no, this movie is like truly an amazing piece of work. It feels like you're watching this. I'm just watching a BBC or a Ken Loach movie, and then suddenly the nuke lands, and you watch every thread. The title's literally about the different threads that hold society together and how we work as and we function, and then each one of those threads is severed, and you're just watching the breakdown of society. And it sounds bleak, and it is bleak and depressing, but the way it is put together as a movie, this is a movie. I avoided this for years because it was hard to get, but you could see it on things like YouTube. But I didn't realize it was a movie. I thought it was going to be like a faux documentary, and there's a couple elements like that. But this is a narrative, and it's really starts with a young guy who knocks up his girlfriend, and then they're kind of making plans together, and things aren't going that well. And then the backdrop is that, things in Iran and Russia, interference, and America. Of course, as soon as I ended it, I turned on the news, and the exact same story was unfolding. It was actually kind of unbelievable. What it builds towards as it starts going into the actual cast, the way it uses fragments to construct a visual picture, like it will show, one person over here, one person here, just close-ups and shots that make it suddenly look like it had a $10 million budget to destroy the planet, where, in fact, it's just really smart independent filmmaking. I really can't. This is like one of the best films I've seen in a very long time. It just, you have to go in with that warning that it's bleak as fuck and it might depress you. But what is mind blowing and earth shattering to my mind after watching this movie, I'm like, okay, I bet this guy didn't make any other movies. He must have just worked for the BBC and made this one bleak vision.
Are you going to tell me that he followed it up with a Benji movie or something?
He made LA Story, The Bodyguard with Whitney Houston.
What?
And Clean Slate, the crazy Garth, Dana Carvey private detective movie with the dog with depth perception problems. Love that movie. Anyway, he made those movies. Story. And Volcano. So Volcano's the only one that makes sense.
Yeah.
But everything else in between, I was like, LA Story? That guy? Like, who, destroyed
Volcano's
England?
bleak as fuck, man.
Oh, no, Volcano, and that makes sense. Like they actually kind of paired together. Wow. But this movie is worth a risk. And I think for horror fans, I mean, look, it's one of those ones where you're like, hey, if movies could save the world, if every world leader watched this, they would be scared as fuck, because the way it shows the destruction of the human body and time, and the one thing it does better than any of the other kind of nuclear fear films like The Day After, a lot of them to me are quite weak, because it does the winter, is it called the winter solstice, the thing that happens to the planet,
nuclear winter.
It really starts documenting that part, and when you get to that part, it's like even after the main destruction's over, you just really see how bleak it is, what it does to people on the planet. Man, it's such an interesting movie, and I'm genuinely surprised how good a movie it is. So that's really what I'm trying to tell people who are on the fence thinking it's some scare tactic Mondo documentary. It's nothing like that. It's a real deal film. So with that bleak thing,
good times.
Good job.
Well, let's bring on a real fun duo.
We'll be right back.
Fun?